Hey, how's it guys? Right, so in this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use pandas-gbq Python library to analyze and transfer data in Google BigQuery. So the pandas-gbq library, as the name suggests, is a lightweight Python package to work with BigQuery data as a pandas data frame. And I've been using pandas-gbq to help my client analyze and putting together reports, and so far the whole experience has been great. And with pandas 2.0, you can incorporate pyarrow to process large data sets more efficiently. I want to quickly go over the prerequisites first. Alright, so first, you'll need to have some experience working with Python and pandas package. And that's all the requirements that is. Now, in terms of the agenda, first we're going to create a Python virtual environment. A Python virtual environment is an isolated environment for Python projects. Each virtual environment has its own Python executable libraries and dependencies, which are separate from other virtual environments. Then we're going to install all the dependencies to use the pandas-gbq package. Now, just in case, if you're brand new to Google Cloud, I'm going to walk you through how to set up a Google Cloud project. And lastly, I'm going to share 4 examples on how we can use pandas-gbq to create and load data from Google BigQuery. Now, let's start with task number 1, which is going to be create a Python virtual environment. Alright, so first we need to pick a directory. Now, for all my projects, I saved them in this Python VMV folder. And I have a separate video that covers how to create and manage Python virtual environment, which I'll link the link in the description below. Alright, so here I'll go ahead and launch your terminal. And I'll be using git bash. Now, to create a Python virtual environment, I'm going to type python-m. And to create a Python virtual environment, we need to use the VMV module, followed by the environment name. Now for the environment, let's name the environment pandas-gbq demo and enter. Now once the environment is created, we need to set it into the directory. Alright, so here we open the directory. Right, so it should be pandas-gbq, and it's right here. Now we need to activate the environment. Basically, inside this scripts folder, we want to run the activate file. And since I'm using bash, so I'm going to type source scripts activate. Now for PowerShell or regular command line, you can directly run the activate file. Now there are a couple dependencies that we need to install. The first one, of course, is going to be the pandas-gbq Python package. Now the second package is going to be the tqdm package, which is a utility that displays progress bar in the terminal. Now to work with Google BigQuery, we need to install the SDK for Google BigQuery, and it's going to be Google Cloud BigQuery. Now, if I'm working with large data sets, let's say 1 billion records of data set, using pandas-gbq Python package, we'll be able to utilize pyarrow, which is a Apache framework that is used to work with big data. Now, in Google BigQuery, if we want to work with pyarrow, we need to install the package for Google Cloud Storage. And it's going to be Google-Cloud Storage. So basically, pyarrow is going to use Google Cloud Storage to partition the process. Alright, so these are going to be the 4 packages that we need to install, and press enter. Now we've completed step 1 and step 2. Now let's move on to step 3, which is going to set up a Google Cloud project. Now this step is optional if you already have Google Cloud project set up. Alright, so navigate to console.here, let me start over again. So navigate to console.cloud.google.com. Now on the top, I want to click on this drop down. Now here I want to create a new project. You can think of project as an application. Now for the project name, I'll name the project pandas-gbq demo. So let's do pandas-gbq demo 1. Then click on create. And once the project is created, we can click on select project. And I'll set the pandas-gbq demo 1 project as the active project. Once we create a project, we need to create a service account. A Google service account is a special type of Google account that is used to access Google Cloud Service on your behalf. It allows applications and services to authenticate themselves. And when you create a service account, Google Cloud generates a JSON file that contains a private key and other authentication details. Now, to create a service account, we want to click on this navigation menu icon. Then go to APIs and Services. Then click on Credentials. Now click on Create Credentials. Then choose Service Account. Now here we want to give our account a name. And I'll name the account pandas-gbq. Let's do gbq admin. And you can also provide a description to describe this account. Now click on Create and Continue. Now we need to assign a role to this service account to limiting what service and actions that this account is able to take. Now on the top, I want to search for Google BigQuery. And I don't see the option. Here, let me try BigQuery. And we now have a list of roles that is dedicated to BigQuery. Now for this demo, I'm going to choose BigQuery admin. Then I'm going to click on Continue to go to the next step. Now click on Done to finish the setup. Alright, so we now have created the service account. Now click into the account. On the top, click on Keys. Now here I want to click on Add Key and want to add a new key. For the key type, make sure that you choose JSON, then click on Create. Now it's going to prompt you to save the service account file. Alright, so basically you can create multiple service account files that are tied to the service account. And I'm going to save the file. Name the file to something that is easily recognizable. And I'll name the file SA stands for service account, pandas-gbq admin. Now that's going to be all the setup that we need to do when it comes to set up our Google Cloud project. Now in terms of authentication, so there are a couple ways we can authenticate the service account when we are connecting to Google BigQuery API. The first method is going to be creating an environment variable. Alright, so here I'm going to go into my System Properties window. Then click on Environment Variables. Then you want to create a variable. You want to name the variable Google Application Credentials. That looks like this. So basically, every time when you are trying to connect to Google APIs or Google Cloud APIs, the API is going to look at this environment variable first and to see if a client file is provided. And if not, then it's going to check if it manually provides the credential file. Alright, so that's approach number 1. Now, for this demonstration, I'm going to manually authenticate my account. Alright, so here I'm going to create a Python script. And I'll name the script gbq authentication.py. I'm going to launch my VS Code. I'm going to select the environment that I just created. And right here. Now, if I want to manually authenticate the service account, so here we can import the OS module. Then we can create the environment variable manually. So we can use the os.environment. And I'll name the environment variable Google application credentials. And I'll provide the file path to the service account file. Now this method is going to override the existing Google application credential environment variable value. And let me name this as method 2. Now for method 3, which is going to be the last method that I'm going to introduce, is directly authenticate using google.auth2. And from this module, there's a function called service account. So for example, I'm going to name the output as credentials. And from service account module, want to reference the credentials class that from service account file. Now here we want to provide the client file path. And it's going to be method 2. Actually, not method 2, method 3. So the drawback using method 3 is every time when you are using pandas-gbq module, you will need to manually provide this credentials object when you are making API code. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and import the pandas-gbq module. Now let's assume that I'm trying to make an API code to load some data from a Google BigQuery database. Now from pandas-gbq, and this should be pandas. There's a method called read-gbq. And we can pass the SQL statement. Then we need to provide the credentials to the credentials parameter. Then you can go ahead and make the API call. Now throughout this tutorial, I'll be using method 2 to authenticate my account. Alright, so I prepared 4 files. And let me open those files. Alright, so for the 4 examples, the first example is going to create a data frame giving a BigQuery SQL statement. Now the second example is going to be a variation of how we can create a data frame. Now for example 3, we're going to write data back to a BigQuery database. And lastly, I'm going to show you how we can use pyarrow to load large data sets. Alright, so let's do this. I'm going to go into my BigQuery console. Alright, so we can do that by going into BigQuery, then click on SQL Workplace. Actually, not Workplace, Workspace. Now, the way how Google BigQuery works is, you can have multiple databases under each project. Now, in Google BigQuery, a dataset is equivalent to a database. So under this BigQuery public data project, these are going to be the databases. In this case, it's going to be datasets under the BigQuery public data project. And since I don't have any table under my pandas-gbq demo 1 project, for now, I'm going to use my SQL for BigQuery project. And to access that project, I need to use a different service account file. Alright, so here let me replace the service account file. So I'll put that right here. Alright, so here I'm going to import the OS module. Then I'm going to import the pandas-gbq module. And let me put this on the left. Now let's say I want to load a data set from my JJ sales data table. Now if we preview the table real quick, let's say I'm going to provide a SQL statement to return all the columns except the quantity or the column. Alright, so here I'm going to create a variable. I'll name the variable SQL. And it's going to be the SQL statement I'm going to pass to the pandas-gbq module to retrieve the data set. Now from pandas-gbq, we can use the read gbq method, and I'll pass the SQL statement. Now if I want to return all the counts from the table, in that case, you can simply write the table name, and that'll be sufficient. And this is going to be everything we need to write to make an API call to load the data set into a data frame. Alright, so here I'm going to name the output as df. Now if I highlight this code block, and I'm going to manually execute the Python statements. Now from the print statement, it's going to return the output as a regular data frame. Now at this point, you can work with the data frame to manipulate the data, clean out the data, however you want. Now I want to be more specific when it comes to providing the requirements. Alright, so here let me go into example 2. And I'm going to copy paste these 3 lines. Alright, so here let me paste the SQL statement. Now this time I'm going to return 4 counts. Alright, so from pandas-gbq read gbq. Now let's say I want to be more descriptive when it comes to providing my parameters. I'm going to manually write the parameters. And I'll pass the SQL statement. Now here, a couple other things we can do is we can specify the index column. And let's say I want to use the order number column as the index. So I can set index as order number. Now if I want to reorder the columns, I can use the column order parameter. And I can specify the column order. Let's say I want to have the sales column in the first column, followed by status, followed by product line. And I can also limit how many rows I want to return by using the max results parameter. And let's say I only want to return 100 records, so I can set this to 100. Now name the output as df2. Now if I run the code snippet, actually not code snippet, the code block. Now it's going to return 100 records, and it's going to give me a table where the order number column is going to be the index, followed by the 3 columns that I specified in the column orders parameter. Now let's say I want to create a table in Google BigQuery. Now using pandas-gbq Python module, we can easily create a table in Google BigQuery. So here I'm going to import one more module. I'm going to import the pandas module, and it's going to be the regular pandas module. And let's say I want to create a new table, and I'll name the table as state city table. And this time I'm going to create the table under my pandas-gbq demo 1 project. So I need to swap the service account file. Now for the table that I'm going to create, the table is going to have 2 columns. The first column is going to be the state. The second column is going to be the city. And here I need to change the project name. The first portion is going to be the project name, and it's going to be pandas-gbq demo 1. And for the data set, which is going to be the database, let's do demo. And I'm not sure if pandas-gbq is able to create a data set or database from scratch, but we'll give it a try. Alright, so here I'm going to create the regular data frame first. Let's call this df data. Then we're going to use the pd.dataframe, and I'll pass the data object. Now here, let me terminate this session. I want to start everything from scratch. Alright, so if I go ahead and run the code block, now it's going to return the data frame that contains these 2 columns. Now to create a new table in Google BigQuery, so here we want to use the pandas-gbq.toGBQ method, and we'll pass the data frame followed by the table ID. Now here, using the ifExists parameter, we can specify the action that we're going to take if a table already exists. Now here, let me run these two lines to create the table. Now it's like the API code failed, and that means I need to create a database first. Alright, so here I'm going to create a data set. And I'm naming the dataset JJ and create. Alright, so going back to my script, I'm going to rename the project to JJ. And I'll recreate the table ID. Alright, so here let me try again. So I'm going to run these two lines. And I'm getting the same error. Alright, so it's saying that this project ID does not exist. Now let's troubleshoot the issue. I think this is going to be a pretty good exercise. Alright, so I'm going to copy the project ID from the error message. So here I noticed that my mistake. So I actually named the project GBG, not GBQ. Alright, so I'm going to name this as pandas-gbq as the project name. And I want to try again, so I'll name this as demo. I want to see if the pandas-gbq module is able to create the dataset from scratch. Alright, so I'll go ahead and run these two lines. And it looks like I can indeed use the pandas-gbq library to create a data set. Now here, let me refresh the project. And here's the demo data set. And under the data set, I should expect the stately table table. Now if I preview the table real quick, and these are the 5 records that I created. Now, just in case, if I want to take a different action, we can either replace the table when the table already exists, and you can also specify the column schema. So for example, let's say I want to set the state column as a string data type. Inside the list, I need to provide a dictionary object where the name key is going to contain the column name. Type is going to be the data type. And one more option is you can append the records to the existing table. Now let's finish the tutorial with the last example, which is going to be reading a large data set. Alright, so here I'm going to import the time module. Because I want to show you the time difference when it comes to incorporate the pyarrow framework versus just using the regular dataframe framework. Alright, so here I have a SQL statement from the BigQuery public data project, the Austin bike share database, the bike share trips table. Now this table has, let's see, so this table has approximately almost 2 million records and 9 columns. Now because this is a public project, so everyone will be able to access the tables inside the BigQuery public data project. Now here I have 2 executions. So the first execution is going to load the dataset while using the pyarrow framework. So here I'm going to set the use BG storage API to false. Now for the second execution, and since I want to incorporate pyarrow framework to load the dataset more efficiently, so I'm going to set the use BQ storage API to true. Now if I press F5 to run the script, now if we look at the output, for the execution while using pyarrow, the execution time is about 184 seconds, so approximately 3 minutes. If we incorporate pyarrow, the execution time is about 104 seconds, and which is almost twice faster. I think the server speeds today, I was able to load the dataset in 30 seconds. But yeah, so this is going to be everything I'm going to share in this video. If you have any question or any feedback, please post it in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give this video a like and click on the subscribe button. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.